I'm John Giannini. I'm a contracts manager for Georgia and the Carolinas business units. I've been with Turner for 12 years. I've worked in the construction industry for 39 years. Mostly I've been a construction person, but along the way I picked up a law degree and I'm a member of the Georgia Bar. Probably been involved with about 10 projects at Turner that have the design, build, delivery method. When we talk about a design-build contract, obviously we have to talk about the contract between the owner and Turner, as well as between Turner and the designer. And there are considerations in both of those, similar considerations, and obviously the contracts have to align. If we have a certain obligation to the owner, and that obligation involves certain aspects of design services, we need to make sure that the designers have that obligation to Turner. There are a wide variety of standard form contracts for design-build delivery methods, from the AIA, from the consensus docs, from the DBIA, from the EJCDC. Today we'll be looking mostly at the consensus docs. The consensus docs 410 is the owner design builder agreement. The consensus docs 420 is the design builder designer agreement. The consensus docs are based on the old Associated General Contractors documents, which Turner had a lot of input in creating. In a design contract, one of the most important legal considerations is the concept of standard of care. In other words, what is the performance, what is the level of performance that's required for the design services? The legal standard of care required of professionals, such as architects and engineers and attorneys, is actually a minimum level of competence. It's a basic level of competence. This is not an error-free standard, but rather is considered a negligent standard. The effect of this is that designers are not held accountable for minor errors or omissions in the construction documents, provided those errors and omissions don't rise to the level to imply negligence. That's obviously a vague standard. That is the standard. At the same time, most states have adopted the legal principle articulated by the United States Supreme Court in 1918 in a court case called the United States versus Spearin, which holds that the owner is strictly liable to the contractor for the cost arising from any errors or omissions in the construction documents. So you think about it, the owner has this very high standard that it has to deliver to the contractor as far as the accuracy and the completeness of the plans and specs, yet the architect and the designers owe this lower negligence standard to the owner. So you have this gap. It's a liability gap, and it's often referred to as the Spearin gap. In a traditional delivery method, sometimes owners will try to shed that gap through contract language, making the general contractor or the construction manager liable for filling in gaps in the construction documents. Usually that doesn't work, and it's not a fair way to try to close that gap. The really only honest way and foolproof way for an owner to close that gap is through a design-build delivery method, because then the design builder owns that gap. An issue that comes up is whether the designer can be liable for reliance on the owner's program or other information provided by the owner, such as bridging documents. One national architectural firm that Turner has worked with several times on design-build projects proposes changes to the standard of care to state that the designer will not be liable for relying on the owner-provided information. On the other hand, Turner's standard modifications to the consensus docs explicitly states that the designer can be liable and will be liable. And these two positions are at opposite extremes. This is one case where the owner's contract with Turner has to be aligned with Turner's contract with the designer. If our contract is going to provide that we are responsible for ferreting out errors or omissions in the owner's information, then we have to pass that liability down and that obligation down to the architect.